and ended up very soon after that at MDA working on the RADARSAT 2 project and other space missions in the company there. So it's been a not quite a smooth ride the whole way, but it's just if that's where your passion is, it's the best place to be, and that's what it is for me. Nowadays, I'm on my own. I'm doing some contracting for a couple of customers on a couple of space mission concepts. And of course, I'm still running the Canadian Satellite Design Challenge, although it's in a little bit of I was going to say coma, but a bit of a snooze right now. However, we have also started up a high school CanSat competition, and I think that's and partly for me, it's looking back to where I was in high school and university initially with the CSDC, but trying to provide those opportunities and show that those opportunities are available to younger and younger students and get them really fired up with motivation and passion to work in space and to pursue their passion and know that there are opportunities to do that.
Excellent, Lawrence. You're doing amazing things just like Adam is. And let's move on to our last panelist. Kevin, what are you up to? And, tell us about why aerospace is so interesting to you.
Thanks. Yeah, so I've always had an interest in space ever since I was very young. I kind of brought that with me when I was going through high school, and I thought, where can I go, pursue this passion of space? And I found Carleton University, which is one of the few universities in the country that allows you to actually do the space part of aerospace in your undergrad. I didn't want to wait till grad school for that. So I came to Carleton, and the rest is really history from there. So I do bring a bit of a different perspective to this panel. I am a recent graduate. I finished my master's of aerospace engineering just last year in 2019, actually, where I worked on some novel space debris removal technology. Um, from there, I was really looking at opportunities. I'm passionate about, space debris removal. It's sort of like global warming in space. It's something we should be talking more about. And I really wanted to make a difference in that industry. But when I looked around at Canada and even the rest of the world, there isn't really any opportunities to go work in that field. It's not really a thing yet. So I took really the unconventional path of starting my own company with my colleagues. So three of us co-founded Obruta Space Solutions, where we are developing space debris removal technology as well as enabling satellites to be serviceable in the future to really make the next generation of space sustainable as we really commercialize and begin to occupy orbit.
Excellent. Well, as you can see, I mean, our panel is diverse in thought, in expression, and in any manner that you can possibly think about. So this is why I wanted to have this conversation today. Is each and every single one of you bring a very unique perspective to making this industry more inclusive. Each and every single one of you have a very individual experience as to how you got introduced or how you're still part of the industry. So what I want to ask, and I'll first start off here, is that what do you think needs to be done on a commercial level to create opportunities for the new generation? And the new generation in this case are recent graduates, enthusiasts, individuals that are looking to transition their career from an entirely different industry to the space industry. We have a lot of that happening. Overarching spectrum of STEAM. What do you think that we can do? Let's start off. Let's start off with Adam. Adam,
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the things that's pretty clear from all of us is that this is an industry that attracts passionate people. That is one of the greatest things about this industry, and so recognizing that and recognizing where that passion exists and supporting it and cultivating it, I think is really critical. And part of how you do that is, meet students where they are, recognize what's got them interested, and work to help foster and cultivate that. So when it comes to rocketry, this is an area that is drawing a lot of people right now into STEM. There's there's the SpaceX effect. There's a lot of excitement around it, and it was really telling. I found, a year ago at the International Astronautical Congress, of all the students part of the Canadian delegation there, probably about 2/3 of them were rocketry students. So when people have these interests, it's important to do what you can to harness that and support it, especially while they are still students, because students have the ability to take on levels of risk that no company would ever touch. They've got the ability to learn things and close that gap between the theoretical and the practical at a far lower cost than once they're on a company's payroll. So the more opportunities they can have to learn, try, and fail when the cost of failure is low, the better equipped they're going to be when they go out into the industry. So anything that companies can do to support these types of initiatives that give students those opportunities, I think will go a very long way to cultivating that next generation of the workforce.
Great point. Kevin, let's go to you. What do you think about what can we do in order to make individuals like yourself who are recent graduates who are taking the unconventional path, but other folks who don't necessarily have that desire?
Yeah, so to build off of what Adam said just a bit, I believe that companies really should be, seeking out students at the source, at the schools. And really to do that, the best way is support the projects that already exist or even make new ones. With my experience going through university, when I entered in my undergraduate, there were no competitions. In my first year, another student at the university created a lunar rover design team so we can compete in US tournaments. In my fourth year, there was no rocketry club, so someone created it. And now the university really has a flourishing suite of competitions with the fourth year project for satellite design, where they compete in the Canadian Satellite Design Challenge. But until then, there was really nothing. So even though that's sort of established now, the big problem is that no companies are engaging with them. The students have to go out and find the companies and almost beg them for support. Where if the companies could just come into the university, offer support, and at the end of the day, they're getting a great return on their investment because these students are learning and actually entering the industry with much better skills than if they just didn't do anything. And at the end of the day, you can sort of cherry pick co-op students and sort of train them to exactly what you want for your company. Or if you help foster their creativity earlier on, they're entering the industry with a much more open mind, maybe even a better set of skills, which will help your company in the long run. So I really think, yeah, going to the universities, helping fund them, starting off earlier, really even in high schools with, even things like FIRST Robotics, everything helps. So I think you got to just go to the source, not let them come to you.
Great point. And Lawrence, what do you think? I mean, um,
Yeah, well, I actually, I kind of thought industry was doing a fairly good job of engaging co-op students. And, for them, obviously, as Adam said, they're in a low-risk job and you get to see them. It's like a 4-month-long interview. Um, but they need to be aware of the students and the projects that they're working on. And there are a number of ways you can do that. I mean, yes, the students have to go to them for sponsorships, or they often do. But beyond that, go to them and say, and we've had this in the CSDC, where some of the teams will go to MDA or Magellan and say, we'd like to present our critical design review to you. Would you be interested in seeing it? And that's an amazing way to raise the awareness level within the companies of them realizing, holy cow, there are some great students out there, and we want to hire you when you're done. I have seen that happening with tracking a number of the students through the years on LinkedIn of where they have been going for co-op work terms and ending up at those companies afterwards. So I mean, through the it's a non-financial support to the teams if you can. I mean, of course, yes, every team does need some financing for their projects, but trying to engage them on more than just a, could you please sponsor us? Can you please help us out? Can you, and show your passion, show your abilities to those companies, and raise the awareness level in the companies, and they'll suddenly clue into, wow, we got to get us some of these students.
Excellent point. Now, absolutely, students can always step and take that step as a proactive measure, but there is still a bit of a barrier in terms of, should I approach a large company, or should I find another way to dive into that? As folks with nonprofit profits, which are tremendously helpful in this case, what do you think students can do?
Can I jump in there first on that one?
Yeah, absolutely.
My own experience, when I first joined MDA following the International Space University, I was actually on a project to do coding for the Navy, quite non-space. And while I was there, one of the quarterly reviews, they presented the bid that MDA had just put in for RadarSat-2. I immediately after this presentation, I went over to the bid manager and introduced myself to him, and I love this. I would love to work on it. You have to make a step of going and introducing yourself and networking, I guess. But you sometimes have to make that first step to go to somebody and introduce yourself and just say, I'd love to work on this when it happens. There's a quote of of Burt Rattan's that keeps going around in my mind, that he said, so Burt Rattan from Scaled Composites and the genius behind Spaceship 1 and 2 for Virgin Galactic. He said he hires students, hires students or hires employees not for the grades on the report card, but for the fire in their soul. You have to show that passion and desire, and that's the way you get noticed, and that's the way you get into the kinds of things you want to do.
Yeah, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that just like it's valuable for companies to reach the students where they are, students also kind of need to reach the companies where they are. While it we could all wish sometimes that it were easier than it is. Students are going to have to be actively involved in helping to change that. One of the things that I find is often a real challenge is that we've gotten very used in Canada to this very compartmentalized thinking, I think, when it comes to space. And so if you go to a company for sponsorship for, say, a rocket project, the initial reaction is probably going to be, well, we're not a rocket company. We don't do that. So why is this valuable to us? I think it's important to explain to people that space projects are incredibly multidisciplinary, and rockets, take that to the nth degree. There's no area of engineering that doesn't work its way in. And so while at face value, it might seem like these are projects that are tied to a specific niche area, they're really not. They're really complex systems engineering programs. And so a lot of what comes from that is highly multidisciplinary. And so I think emphasizing to companies that fact, and that whether you're working on a space system, robotic system, or a rocket, a lot of the basic engineering approach is going to be very, very similar. And so giving students more opportunities to go end to end, developing real hardware from initial concept to test is really valuable. And so helping companies to recognize that, I think, is going to go a long way to changing the consciousness in the way that we need to.
That's a great point, Adam. Kevin, what are your thoughts around this as a young entrepreneur tapping into a market? What do you think?
Yeah, if I could actually just speak towards the students, I would just tell them at the end of the day, you have really nothing to lose about approaching these companies. You're a student, you're not a seasoned career professional. You're not tarnishing your image by asking for help. No one ever is at the end of the day, but especially for a student. So if you just take that initiative, go out there, and people love to help. Maybe that's just me personally, but if someone asks me for help, I will always try to do what I can to support them in any way possible. Maybe it's not even monetary. People don't want to be seen as a product, but if you said, "Hey, could you maybe come help offer an hour a month on a Zoom call and mentor our university rocket team?" Is that possible? Maybe they can't, but they could say, I'll ask the office and see if anyone is willing to, volunteer some of their time to help you. So yeah, just really getting that initiative out there, putting your foot forward and showing that you want it. That first kind of asking is really the key to just starting the ball rolling.
So I'm guessing the moral here that I'm getting that is being relayed to students here is that don't be afraid, just go and do it.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to sort of switch a bit here, and I want to talk a little bit about the fact that in this industry, your network is your net worth is actually a large component in where and how your career progresses. So, what advice as individuals who are now in the industry and have had experience, what would you say? How can you ensure that the network is your net worth be incorporated for the new generation? It's a similar approach. What are some of the strategies that you have taken?
Uh, yeah, so if I can just jump in first. So I would say, as someone who, just graduated recently in the last year and went on to try and establish myself as a big player in a brand new industry, it is very hard when you don't have that 20 years of experience and that large network to back you up. So some of the things that I've personally done are just really, getting myself out there, taking those steps. I might not be a student anymore, but I'm still willing to go up to people at conferences, go to every single booth on the exhibition floor, talk to people, reach out on LinkedIn, ask for advice whenever I can. Just really getting yourself out there and making your voice heard. That's a great way to sort of be in touch with the key players in the industry and at the forefront of sort of what's going on. And then the second part of that is just never get complacent. Don't think, oh, I'm well in my career, I can just sort of sit back and coast. You always want to be finding out who the new people into the industry are, what the young people are thinking, because maybe they see it from a completely different perspective than you. So yeah, just like always be active, trying to learn more, and just don't get complacent with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, space really is a very small, closely knit community. It certainly is within Canada, but even internationally it is. So get involved with the community, be interested, and meet other interesting people within it. Case in point, over the summer, given that student competitions became impossible, we put together a series of virtual talks for the students. And I was able to get some of the top players in the launch industry internationally to speak to them. We had, Peter Beck, the founder and CEO of Rocket Lab. We had Tori Bruno, the CEO of United Launch Alliance. We got the co-founder of SpaceX and their original head of propulsion. And most of these people came through my and my associates' own networks. These are heavy hitters in the industry, but they are people that are human. You can talk to them. You can actually get them to do things like this. And the one thing that they will always recognize is that shared passion and enthusiasm. That was one of the things that really emerged as a common theme from all of the speakers. They're people with common interests, and so you can reach out to them, but it definitely helps to do something real to stand out. So don't just talk about space. Go build and launch a liquid rocket, and then you'll really have something to talk about with people in that industry, and you might be surprised how far that can get you.
You're on mute again, Hussain.
Yeah, I said, Lawrence, what are your thoughts?
I think I will just echo what Adam and Kevin said. You know, things like showing your passion. So going to some of the conferences, well, not all students can do that. I mean, I've been impressed now to see some CSDC students or participants at 2, perhaps 3 conferences even before they've graduated. So there again, as you know, it's a small community, and we start to recognize and see people, and you see their abilities and their interest, obviously, from attending. Not everyone can go to a conference, IAC or even the CSS conference, but locally get involved in your Royal Astronomical Society if you're really interested in space. Do things like educational outreach to schools, and you start to build your network that way, and show your passion for the field. And I mean, if you're an introvert, get over it. I've had to. You know, it takes a long time. It can be uncomfortable. It takes practice, and that's all. I'm far more comfortable now than even when I was in my early 30s at giving a presentation in front of people. So that's something that can be very uncomfortable to start with, but it just takes practice. And it's partly why we insist on having in-person presentations in the CSDC and doing educational outreach. You know, that's an important skill to develop for your career. And so it's best to start practicing as soon as you can.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And I think this is something that obviously a lot of engineers and scientists have to focus upon when it comes down to skills and skill development versus approach and networking. And I think so. What I wanted to ask you all is that there's a fine balance I find that I have personally experienced, but folks around me who've graduated, the number of skills that you're building versus the number of times that you are going out there to pitch those skills. What do you think can be an approach that students in the new generation can take? I'm talking about early on, in your academic careers. What should you focus on? Should you focus on building your key engineering scientific skills, or should you balance that out with going out and reaching out to the folks like yourself and connecting with you all and volunteering your time? Adam.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is all about balance. There's no two ways about it. You know, the people skills are actually incredibly important. I had actually an undergraduate professor once who I think put it really well. He said, engineering is not the profession for shy neurotic geniuses. So as Larry said, you are going to have to get over that. Sir Isaac Newton was a brilliant scientist and mathematician. He would have made a terrible engineer because he was famously unable to work with people. Engineering is really all about teamwork, and you've got to be able to do that, and you've got to be able to communicate what you've done. These things are really important, but the practical skills are also really critical in this as well. And often this is an area where a lot of traditional university programs sometimes don't equip you as well as might be hoped. A wise person once said that rocket science is actually fairly easy. It's rocket engineering that's hard. And it really is true. And so closing that gap between the theory and the practice is really important. And I think this is where student projects are so enormously valuable. They're a great way to do that. And once you start doing that, then all of a sudden, you're not just a person who got whatever GPA in your degree. You're somebody who's done something real. And at our talks with the students over the summer, one of the questions that students asked people all the time was, what do you look for most in an employee? Do you want to see someone with a stellar GPA, or do you want to see practical experience? Without fail, everybody said, hands down, it's the practical experience. I will, hire somebody who has demonstrated that they can lead a complex rocket project much sooner than I will hire someone who got an incredible mark in a rocket propulsion course.
Kevin, as a new graduate, what are your thoughts around this?
Yeah, I would say it's all about balance, as Adam said. It's extremely important to have that solid foundation of the technical skills. When you think about it, though, when everyone is graduating university, you should sort of have a level playing field. You know, if everything goes right, everyone should have learned more or less the same thing in university. So when you're entering that industry, the things that separate you are your experiences. If you worked on a rocket project, if you worked on your university's satellite design, then that's really what's going to separate you from your other colleagues. And even though you have the best grades in the university, someone who has, been part of a rocket that they launched at a competition, that might be what sets them apart. Because in the long run, it comes down to your ability to learn, pick new things up quick, and all of that is really going to come from experience. So getting those experience from the projects is really going to help you at the end of the day.
Lawrence, CSDC, a great example of this. What are your thoughts?
Thanks, Hussain. Again, echoing what both Adam and Kevin have said, and I would go even one further to say, if you want to talk about diversity, well, then be diverse in your pursuits. Don't just be totally focused on space, space, space. I had an English prof in university who said he got a position at a college once because he put down on his resume that he played jazz guitar. And the others in the interviewing panel were, oh, hey, we've got a little jazz band, maybe you could join us. And that kind of bonding to them, that's incredibly important, as well as the yes, academically and project experience. Be diverse as well. Scuba diving, photography, arts related pursuits as well, or scientific or hiking, these sorts of things that you enjoy doing. Diversify your character, and you never know, of course, where you're going to learn things or meet people in other pursuits as well.
Excellent points. Excellent points. Thank you so much, folks. So one of the things that has come up is, a lot of the engineering classes have slowly started to become larger and larger. And towards the end, there are more students diving into engineering and science to pursue novel careers like aerospace engineering or space rocket science and things like that. But there are a limited amount of jobs that are available, and I'm referring this in the geographical context of Canada. We're a very, very large country from a geographical perspective, but we don't have that much capacity. So that makes a lot of students look outside, look south of the border, across the Atlantic, sometimes even going across the Pacific. What are your thoughts, and what can you share that the commercial companies and the government should be doing to enable and make sure that our talent stays within the country? Adam, go ahead. Anybody, chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's ultimately, people are going to leave if they don't see opportunity in Canada, or at least some credible path to creating that opportunity. With rockets in particular, it's sort of an odd area because there are actually some very significant barriers to people leaving the country to work in that industry in the United States. ITAR comes into play, so you really need to be a U.S. citizen or green card holder in order to do that. So that creates, on the one hand, this a situation where people often don't have the ability to go and pursue that dream job at SpaceX if that's what they really want to do. It does mean that we've got a real opportunity here in Canada if we can create opportunities for them to be able to run with this here. And I think one of the first things that needs to happen is a bit of a change in our thinking, because we all too often get into this kind of zero-sum game mentality when it comes to technology or jobs or any of these things. You know, that this idea that we've got a finite pie, we can only divide it so many ways, and so we need to pick and choose, you know, these 2 or 3 niche areas and focus entirely on that. The problem when you do that is that it is not particularly responsive to the actual needs and interests and opportunities that are out there. You know, as soon as you identify priority areas, somebody has to decide what those priorities are, and on some level that involves trying to predict the future, trying to predict what the big thing is going to be, and where people's interests are going to lie, and we humans are not very good at doing that. Not a lot of people saw a company like SpaceX coming and doing what they did. In fact, for a long time, it was conventional wisdom in the industry that that was borderline impossible, until obviously suddenly it wasn't anymore. And I think rocketry in Canada is very much in that same sort of situation. You know, a lot of people completely dismissed this, and so it was never a focus for Canada. But now all of a sudden, we've got like 20 major universities all across the country with over 1,000 students that are working on advanced rocket projects. Nobody particularly saw that coming, but this is the situation we've got now. And so for people like that, it is important to make sure that they feel recognized and valued, and that passion of theirs, you know, gets some basic level of support so that they have the opportunity to run with it. And it's a little bit encouraging because now there are several space launch startups in Canada, and every one of them either exists because of student rocketry or else hires almost exclusively from among the student rocket teams, because right now that's the talent pipeline in Canada. So we can do this. We can work to grow that pie, but it takes a certain level of support to recognize the value in doing so and remove some of the barriers that make it difficult. Unmute again, Hussain.
That is okay. We're gonna go past this. Kevin, what are your thoughts?
As Adam said, the biggest thing is just to grow the pie. In Canada, we are world leaders at robotics, as you see all the time with the Canada Arms, the various ones. We are world leaders in Earth observation. But as we're starting to see, there's a lot of new industries emerging here. Internet, telecommunications, IoT, as well as launch services. There's several launch companies and a spaceport being constructed in Nova Scotia. So the industry is really beginning to open up right now. And I think once it sort of, gets its stride, starts moving a bit quicker, that is when we can start retaining more and more Canadians, or even anyone in Canada in the industry within Canada. Obviously, if there's better opportunities elsewhere, people are going to go. You can't really help that. So at the end of the day, we need the support to grow the industry. And at the base level, that happens on the governmental side. The government has to be on board, and we've seen that now. They say, we want Canada to be a launching nation. We're going to support that. And it's just things like that. The more initiatives like that need to be taken to just grow Canada's presence in the global space economy.
Excellent point, Lawrence. On to you.
Yeah, when the CSDC started, we're actually just coming up on our 10th anniversary shortly. One of the concerns I certainly was thinking about was that there wouldn't be enough career opportunities for students when they graduated, and at that time I don't think there were, and it felt like, geez, we're getting them involved in making a CubeSat and getting really fired up to work in space, and there aren't any jobs here. But that has changed over the last 10 years. We've seen new projects. I mean, RCM was going through much of that and is finished, and now CSA and D&D are looking at next generation Earth observation constellations. But in that time also, there have been many startups. There's been Kepler, Wyvern starting up. As Adam said, some launch companies, and I've can't think of them off the top of my head, but I've had some former participants from CSDC, and I've seen them being connected on LinkedIn, and they've started up a company looking at space applications of data, looking at making space hardware. So there really are two avenues. One is the traditional community of space in Canada, CSA and the large companies, and they are in fact growing. And then there is make your own and find a niche, find a need and fill it. And we've seen that as well. So, I kind of think that there are some very good opportunities now available that maybe weren't 10 years ago. And they're make more, if if you've got a good idea, pursue it. And we've seen some great successes from that.
Yeah, concur. Well, I'd like to end off the panel and then go over to the Q&A session with this one question. What is the value of choosing, or of a new generation that is up and coming, especially folks that are graduating out of high schools during COVID times and going into universities, folks that are in first, second, third year and thinking about whether it's sticking out in the space industry, choosing space versus other industries? What is the value? Why should they choose space? We've talked about passion, but what's the true intent here?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it all relates to the passion. I think you should choose space if you're really passionate about it. If you're really passionate about being in civil engineering and building beautiful bridges, pursue that. If you are passionate about icebreakers or Navy destroyers, pursue that. Don't choose space just because it's an option. I think that's you have to pursue your passions that way. So if you're pursuing it in space, and I really hope it is because you are incredibly passionate about working in it and motivated to just have an incredibly rewarding career in it.
Kevin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so to follow that up, I would hope everyone in the space industry is extremely passionate about it. But to speak to the people who are maybe on the fence, they like space, but they want to get into some other career as well. They want to go into finance or something. At the end of the day, the space economy is extremely broad. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear the noise there. The space economy is extremely broad and really accommodates a wide range of people. The other thing is that we're kind of in this new era of space. It's almost like the Wild West, where as it becomes more commercialized, it's extremely open. The next big thing could be a huge variety of industries. Satellite servicing is coming online. In-space manufacturing. We have Earth imaging like we've never had it before, commercialized launch, colonizing the moon, mining the moon. Like every single sector in the world will have an impact on space, no matter what you do in one way or another. Life in space one day will be just like life on Earth, bustling economies, people everywhere, people living there all the time. And we're just at the cusp of that transition. So if you want to be part of the next big thing, it's almost like when the internet was made in the, going into the early thousands. The bubble is growing. We're seeing this great expansion of the sector. So if you want to be part of the next big thing and really be part of Team Space, then it's not going to disappoint.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I strongly agree with both. I think the pragmatic approach might be to note that space is pretty much the definition of a future-proof industry. Space is only becoming more important to our country, our economy, and our world. And so as economies change and industries rise and fall over time, I think there's no question that space is going to be an ever more important part of the economy of the future. And I think that that's one really compelling reason to take it seriously. But I think there's also no question that, you know, the passion element is really critical here. Most people don't choose to pursue a career in space just because it was, you know, either that or become an accountant. Nothing against accountants, of course, but people who choose space get into it because it's something that really excites them. It gets them up in the morning, and they want to work in that field. And rocketry tends to be a particularly extreme example of this because, particularly in Canada, it's not easy to go that route. There are a lot of obstacles and very little support. So you've got to be passionate to even contemplate doing it. Otherwise, you're in for a really tough slog that will end up disappointing you along the way. And the good thing about it is working alongside people like that really is inspiring, and it's contagious. You know, this is if you're someone who is passionate, then surrounding yourself by people who feel the same way will keep that energy going, and that's really exciting.
Well, thank you so much for all of you for your insights. We'll move over to the Q&A. And the first question that I have for you, and we'll start with Kevin. Do you see a trend for including more women in this field of expertise? We have mainly seen it to be men, including the conference of today. So you can focus on the first part, and we'll try to make sure that we make it more inclusive on our behalf at CSS.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say it always should be inclusive. You know, the world isn't all men, and it should always be diverse and inclusive. At the end of the day, it really stems from getting people interested in a young age. If we are open, we're promoting space that it's everyone can join. You know, it's you don't promote it to only men, or boys. You promote it to everyone. You know, a woman has just as much place in the industry as a man, and it should be seen that way. I think a problem with the industry right now is that it's not, and that's because the traditional paths into the industry, like engineering, math, physics, are usually promoted as more, you know, boy men sort of careers, and that shouldn't be the case. This is seen with things like the 30 by 30 initiative by Engineers Canada, in which they're trying to get 30% of global licensed engineers women by 2030. Frankly, that number probably a bit too low, but it's a step in the right direction. I would like to hopefully see one day where, you know, it shouldn't even be a topic that's brought up because it's so commonplace, it's normalized. That's the future I would like to see.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Adam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, you know, we generally recognize in this country that diversity is one of the things that that makes us strong. That getting a diversity of thoughts and viewpoints, which tend to come from a diversity of backgrounds, is really valuable. And in areas like rocketry that are also very safety critical, you know, you want people who can think differently, because people who can think differently and bring different perspectives also tend to spot things that other people might have missed, and that's really critical. So there's no question that we need to be doing more to make sure that anybody who does feel drawn to this area feels welcome in it and has the opportunity to you know, to really run with that. And part of that, I think, does simply come from trying to remove some of the barriers to joining this industry and make sure that there are more opportunities so that more people who gravitate that way can run with it.
Lawrence, share your insights here.
Yeah, sorry, I did find it a bit funny that we've got a panel on diversity and inclusion as three white guys. So sorry, I had to say that. Instead, I'm surprised no one else did first. But it's funny. It really seems to be a problem in North America, or I don't know, the English-speaking world, about the gender balance in engineering. I had several fortunate opportunities to travel to Russia and Ukraine for when I was working with MDA, and there engineering is gender balanced in universities. It's 50-50 split of men and women in engineering there. So what are they doing that we're not, or what are we doing to discourage them that they're not? It was quite surprising. Now, part of the CSDC, of course, is educational outreach, and I've been grappling with this, and I'm trying to get some discussions at UBC on their inclusivity or gender inclusion balancing officer there. We try to have, or I try to help teams, or suggest to them to have some of their female team members do educational outreach, be the role model for the younger students that are coming up into it. I mean, my daughters, they're both great at math. One of them already wants to be an aerospace engineer because my wife's an engineer, and it's not just me from the space influence, but for her, there's no there's no problem of learning math or learning engineering just because she's a girl. She's growing up just knowing that's just one of the things she can do. And I mean, it can be a fairly slow progression, but we just need to start. And the role models from CSDC university teams now filtering down to hopefully in the high school levels. And I've heard a few stories that it has helped some high school women choose engineering. And, we just need more of that. And I don't know if it's, well, I'm not an expert on this to say some of the reasons for more women not wanting to go into engineering. And right now it's very daunting, I think, being male dominated. And, we've got to, part of it is we guys got to stop doing that. And, any efforts to try to get female role models, female inclusion, other diversity inclusion, there are all sorts of benefits for diversity. Like we say, diversity in character in your background pursuits of being artistic, being scientific. We got to have that diversity in all sorts of properties. So, yeah, it's a bit muddled. I'm sorry if that sounded a bit muddled, but it really, we need more role models, and we need our male students, us guys in industry have to be recognized that it may take some extra effort to include people who haven't been traditionally included or have felt somehow excluded from science and engineering.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak for CSS, and as a non-for-profit, what our intention is to do that, to do that outreach on behalf of our community, to be able to bring more inclusion and education, and expand the community, because we're all here because of some sort of outreach. And with that, I just want to say I want to deeply appreciate all of your insights and all of your thoughts, and I'd like to put a call out to all of you. We have some more questions. How can students best reach you to get involved, whether it is to your individualistic uh, 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 things that you're doing in the company, or any other way to volunteer?
You can find me on LinkedIn, or send me an email at adam@launchcanada.org. Always invite people to reach out anytime.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Kevin Stadnyk, or go through the Obruta website, or just email me directly, kevinstadnyk@obruta.com. Always happy to help out and answer any questions that I get. So feel free to reach out.
Yep, likewise.